Our native land, our native land, our native land. Hoya, hoya, our native land.
Hey everybody, Tchadas Leo here, host of Our Native Land through Czech Podcast Studios in Victoria, British Columbia. Before we get to today's guest, I would just like to do a territory acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory Czech Studio stands upon, and to all the tribes that are part of the New Channel, Coast Salish, and Kwakwakwa on Vancouver Island. I thank these nations and traditional landkeepers for allowing us to live, work, and play on their lands. Just like I said, my name is Tchadas Leo, host of Our Native Land. Thank you for joining us on another episode. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest. Today on the show is Nicole Luke. Nicole and her family is Inuk from Chesterfield Inlet and the Kivalliq region in Nunavut. Nicole Luke may be the first Inuk to complete an architect program in Canada. After her final few weeks at the University of Manitoba, Nicole will have a full master's degree in architecture with plans to redesign the world. Her path to architecture started in high school with her love of art classes. She found a way to combine her passion for drawing with other interests. Throughout her education, Luke has taken part in a few different eye-opening experiences, including travels to Copenhagen, Italy, and Mexico City. Luke was the exhibition designer for the Inuk Exhibit at Qamajuk, the Winnipeg Art Gallery's Inuit Art Center, which we have mentioned about on the show before. Due to her exposure of urban areas, she's focused on the design realities communities face with in rural and non-rural areas, and believes that the build of environment is a key factor to socioeconomic agencies. Nicole, welcome to Our Native Land.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I know you're just completing your master's here, so you probably got a very busy schedule, but we're going to take a moment here to get to know a bit about you and your path here. So I always like to get a good sense of who I'm talking to, their background, and give me a bit more context of your heritage and your culture, especially because I don't think I've officially ever spoken to an Inuk person before. So this is brand new for me.
Very exciting, yeah. So my name's Nicole. I'm an urban Inuk. I was born in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, but my family is from Chesterfield. I like to say Rankin and just all around the Kivalliq region of Nunavut. But I've been living in Winnipeg for most of my life because my parents had some really great job opportunities in the South, and I thought that for me and my siblings, we would also have really great job opportunities and educational opportunities. So I moved from the North when I was 4, very young, moved to Dauphin, Manitoba, and then my parents then again moved us when I was 8 to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I've just been living here ever since.
Okay, so your memories of the North is not because you left quite young then.
Yeah, I did leave quite young, and me and my mom went up north when I was 8 to 9 for the summer, and my birthday's in the summer, so we went and visited my family in Chester and Rankin, and that was the last time I've ever been up there. But because of where I live in Winnipeg and how the medical flights and everything come down, the Kivalliq region travels to Winnipeg. So I do see my family more often than I get compared to me going up north. But I still keep in contact with them pretty regularly.
That's nice. That's really cool. And I would say, a lot of people that if I have talked to somebody who lives more north of me, I say, oh, you come a bit lower, but I'd say Winnipeg is still a pretty cold place too. So just a tiny bit less cold than Nunavut, I can imagine. Yeah, so I want to know a bit, about the road of you becoming an architect. I found you on an APTN article just a few days ago, and I found your story quite interesting. So tell me, what inspired you to do so, to take this path that you're on right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not an architect yet.
You're going to be
I still got
very soon.
Going to be hopefully in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So I live in Winnipeg. Right? I live in Winnipeg. And I knew in high school that I really wanted to pursue post-secondary. And I found even when I visited my family when I was 9, it kind of gave me a culture shock of my own culture, and I didn't actually know where I really came from. And that really opened my eyes when I went back to school. And every couple of years, I kept on questioning, like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And I was very aware that my educational opportunities were very different in the South. And but I also really enjoyed, like you said, art class, and I took pre-calculus and all the science courses, and I really enjoyed those, but I didn't find them as interesting. And I just thought architecture would be a really great in between for all of that, and I could still be creative and still have still help create a difference in communities.
Hmm.
And um, so I went to the University of Manitoba, which wasn't too far away from the house that I grew up in Winnipeg. So that was very, I think, helpful as well. And yeah, so did my undergrad in environmental design in architecture at the U of M, and then I thought, well, I have to take my master's to become a registered architect in the future. So
Hmm.
I thought the University of Manitoba would also be a great place. And if I wanted to work up north, I think living in Winnipeg, especially with its climate, is something very useful to learn from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to gather correctly, if you study to become an architect, if you don't do your master's, you can't technically be considered an architect. What would you be considered if you didn't do your master's?
You could be an architect. Well, I guess it's still you could be an architectural designer,
Hmm.
and that's technically what I am now. But because I have my master's, um, it's a little bit different. You have a little bit more experience, I guess, under your belt.
Yeah, it's like
And
putting the word doctor in front of your name.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So tell me a bit about you put all your influences together. You know, the math, the art, the things you like to do to create sort of this path of yours here. When you were growing up, or when you decided to do this, did you have were you looking at different Indigenous architects? Was there any in mind that kind of struck a chord with you that you found inspirational, or was it just purely like this is what I have to do?
I kind of just went into it thinking like I want to make sure I work for a place or at a job that I really enjoy. It wasn't necessarily very, I guess, indigenous like driven. And I still, I think as I grew older, I became more aware of how isolated urban Inuit are, and I became more involved with the Manitoba Inuit Association. I was a board member. I took some time off because I was really busy with school,
Mhm.
but with that, and I've gone with them to conferences and learning more and more about urban Inuit aspects and things that I think are very that I relate to. And then I also kept on thinking, well, there's no lights gone. Uh, I was thinking there uh, through my education that there's not a lot of Indigenous representation in architecture, and
Mhm.
it's slowly becoming more and more. And there's more Indigenous architecture students, which is really exciting. But I haven't quite met that many Inuit in the architecture field. And so just as I I was heading more and more into school, I became really aware of how important my position is, and I want to raise more awareness of that.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're on the right path, and obviously you're catching some attention across the country here for your path that you have ahead of you. So I'm excited for you. That's for sure. Tell me a bit about like I'm super curious, kind of to go off the path here, but I did mention you went to like Copenhagen, Italy, Mexico. Tell me a bit about what maybe if you can pick one, which one stood out to you that was kind of like a really cool experience, and what were you doing when you went there?
So I'll just give a quick background on why we go on these trips. Our
Besides that, they're fun.
yeah, besides that they're really fun, and I'm really grateful that we get to do that. So our faculty once a year usually goes on trips. Each studio that you're in has a specific theme that you're going to base your studio project on, and then you create these theoretical building proposals, and which is really great. So depending on your studio, it depends on the trip that you take. So when I went to Copenhagen, the studio that I was in was all about housing, and Copenhagen and Denmark have very specific housing strategies that are really interesting. And so I that's kind of the reason why I went to Copenhagen. And then Mexico City was a social infrastructure studio, so we got to learn more about social infrastructure. And so of course the traveling was amazing and all that, but we uh, I think there's a lot of lessons to learn when you travel to different cities. But I would say the most memorable one that I really enjoyed was Mexico City. It was just like, it's so rich in culture, and it's so different, because I've gone to Mexico on like vacation on like on the coast, and it's not the same as going into Mexico City. It's
Yeah, I
just
can
very
only imagine.
eye-opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very authentic, and I would definitely go back again.
That's cool. That's really cool. I want to get to knowing about more about the exhibit, the Inuk exhibit that you had some experience in. You were one of the designers or the designer for the exhibit. You can obviously give me more information about that. I found out this is a brand new exhibit out in Manitoba, and I have mentioned in my sort of news portion on the podcast before. So for people that haven't seen it before, maybe if you can give some context, first of the significance of this exhibit, and then what you did to help contribute.
For sure. So I was the exhibition designer for Inua, which is the exhibition in the new Inuit Art Center in Winnipeg, or it's also pronounced Hamayuk or Kalmayuk. And it's a very beautiful building. And it was curated by an all female, or sorry, all Inuk, all Inuit curators.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very groundbreaking work. And I think I was I'm very grateful to be a part of that process, because I feel like I learned a lot on the exhibition design gallery side. And I was a part of that position through the Inuit Futures and Arts Leadership program. And also, being in Winnipeg, it's kind of was it just came together like puzzle pieces to be a part of that project. So I helped the curators place the artworks that were in the exhibition, and through digital modeling, and because of everything being on Zoom and WebEx and all that, I had my 3D modeling SketchUp program open, and I shared my screen and had all the art pieces and sculptures digitized into the 3D modeling, and we placed them. It was almost like playing a little Sims game. And
Oh, wow. That's
so
really cool.
that was very helpful, despite everything being distance for the majority of the time. And I think it was really useful and really took advantage of this digital year.
Now, for people that haven't seen it, like I think the coolest thing about that place too is when you walk through the doors, because I did a little kind of virtual video tour. There's that amazing glass display right in the entrance. Well, can you remind me what's exactly inside that glass display? It's beautiful.
So it's majority soapstone carvings,
Okay.
and they're all organized based on, I think, the communities or areas that they're from. I'm not too knowledgeable on the specifics, and I think there's some like pottery and clay work in there as well.
That's really cool.
And so it's like it's a visible vault, and you're able to look inside, but on the inside, that's where the shelving is placed, and the curators or workers are able to walk inside this vault and change the positions of these sculptures and move them around. Where it was once in the Winnipeg Art Gallery's basement vault and covered up, and now it's stored publicly. You can walk in off the street and just take a look at it, even, and walk out and head on your day. It's an open area.
Was there a lot of like Inuk artifacts and art that was kind of sitting around the city that was that part of the reason why they thought this was so important to, like, was it difficult to find all the things that you needed for the gallery, or was it so available that it was just easy, it was just natural, just like we need all the space for all the stuff we're going to put in here? And how did you work with that? Like, was it your creativity in designing that? Was it difficult or was it easy?
So the Inuit Art Center, I think, was created because the Winnipeg Art Gallery had such an abundance of Inuit art that they created this beautiful gallery. and that's where you see the visible vaults, and it's more so on the curator's side that they picked and chose some artworks that were, but they also commissioned some artworks that were brand new for everyone to see. And it's a combination of older carvings and kind of the typical Inuit art that you would imagine, but also there's a lot of new contemporary Inuit art and new artists that are gaining more exposure through this exhibition as well. So it's a really great mix, and really great exposure as well for the artists.
That's awesome. Uh, so are you planning to go back to the Arctic at some point with any new architectural goals once you kind of got your experience? You know, I heard you need like again 2 years of practicing before at a firm before you can officially go on your own and do that. But what were your goals, or if there are any goals of helping the North with your community? What's your outlook?
Yeah, so I feel like I just want to learn as much as I can, at least just to, because I'm still fresh in the industry. There's so much, I feel like, from coming out of my master's, of course I've learned a lot, but I'm more aware of how much I don't know than how much I do know, and there's
Fair
just so
enough.
much more to learn about.
Yeah.
I do want to work in the Arctic. I want to be a part of the uh, infrastructure and architectural developments. I think over the next couple of decades, it's really important for Inuit to be more involved in these types of development, especially if there's so very little Inuit within the architectural field. It's really important for us to gain more sovereignty and autonomy over building and construction, and it's slowly happening. And I'm really excited for that. But it's really important to, um, I guess, be a part of that. I think for myself and my career, and also just more sustainable development. All of the Inuit communities up north are running on fossil fuels that have to be shipped up from the south, and majority of that is through heating and cooling of our buildings. And
Hmm.
I think that really says something about Indigenous sovereignty. So I think having our buildings more um, sustainable and responsive to um, renewable resources is really important for, I guess, the future of Indigenous architecture,
Hmm.
and that's something I want to be a part of.
Absolutely, like finding ways to be as green as possible, and I think that's such a challenge too because I know there's times in the north where there is no sun, so it's like in
Mm-hmm.
the times where there's so much sun you can't handle it, right? Like, like the way
Yeah.
that the days work, obviously. So I think there's such a door there of like how are you going to harness certain types of the year. It kind of, I guess in my head it's like trying to find a type of structure where it's able to take advantage of all the seasons, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of any, like, just based off of family or maybe what you've read or from your community? Do you feel like there's anything lacking there right now besides obviously the sovereignty of people taking over these infrastructure? But is there certain things that you know of right now that are like, oh my God, if we had this, this would be great.
Well, definitely housing is really important. I
Mhm.
think that's kind of an issue that's kind of all across Indigenous communities,
Of
or
course, yeah.
even remote communities, to say. Um, in terms of, in terms of something more general, I think just more education and access to resources. And I think with, I guess, Wi-Fi being slowly, and internet, I should say, more and more available, that could be more helpful across these communities. Because if it wasn't for me coming down south and realizing I'm really interested in architecture, I don't really know where I would be.
Mhm.
And I think having more access to these types of resources that are online now, and we can see that over the past year, everything's more digitized. That could become a really great catalyst for the Arctic.
Mhm. Fantastic. Now, if people are interested in following you, I think I found you on Instagram or somehow, but I know I've seen a bit of your designs and whatnot. If people are interested in learning more about what you're doing or kind of get a sneak preview of what you've done in the past, how do they find you?
I don't quite have anything professionally set up quite yet. It's
That's
in the
okay.
works, but
Yeah.
everyone's welcome to follow me on Instagram
Yeah.
at Nicole.
Okay, there you go. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I know you're doing your master's degree, so it takes a lot of time out of your day. But to be somebody who is Inuk and is seems to be the first one who's graduating with a master's in architect. I think that's a feat within itself, and I think I wish you all the best for that. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Nicole, for coming and spending some time with me on Our Native Land.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much to all of you for watching and listening to this episode of Our Native Land. If you haven't done so already, there's a way you can go back right to the beginning and listen to all of our episodes that we've done here on Our Native Land. The easiest way to do that is to go to www.checknews.ca/ONL. There, you can download it wherever you like to get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google, it doesn't matter. It's all there. The great thing, too, is it's no chronological order. If there's something that interests you, you can look at all the different people that I've interviewed, all the different subjects, and you can see which one is preferable to you. As well, on our podcast, we do Indigenous news. So after the interview with my guests, I do Indigenous news every single week, so you can catch up with your Indigenous news with me, Tchadas Leo, here on Our Native Land. As well, if you haven't done so, you can follow us on our social media platforms. You can go to Facebook and Instagram. It's at Our Native Land Podcast. My Twitter account is Tchadas Leo Check all in capital letters. And our YouTube channel, we are currently airing our full interviews there every Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All you have to do is go to YouTube and type Our Native Land. Okay, thank you so much for watching, listening, and supporting Our Native Land, and we'll see you next week.